Good evening, everybody. It's 7 o'clock, and I'm going to open the Finance Committee hearing. My name is Chris Reynolds, and I'm the chair of the Finance Committee. I want to thank you for attending. This is the second of 3 Finance Committee public hearings. The next hearing is scheduled for Thursday, March 17th at 7 p.m. All the Finance Committee public hearings will be recorded and live broadcast on the Minuteman Media Network. Copies of all public hearing presentation materials and the agendas for each Finance Committee public hearing will be posted and available on the 2022 Annual Town Meeting section of the town's website, along with copies of the recordings of each public hearing. Tonight, we will be hearing from the Minuteman Regional Technical High School, Concord Public Schools, and the Concord Carlisle Regional High School regarding both operating and capital budgets. Article presentations will be made from the podium or from presenters on Zoom. After the presentation, the Finance Committee will have an opportunity to ask questions, and then I will open it up to the public, first for the participants here in the townhouse, and then the Zoom participants. As always, we expect civil dialogue and would appreciate if members of the public could limit their comments and questions to 1 minute. If you're in the public hearing room, please stand and line up at each microphone. I think there are two microphones. If you're on Zoom, please either raise your hand in front of your camera or select the raise hand function in Zoom. For those in the hearing room with the computer, please silence your speakers and microphone. For those attending via Zoom, please silence your microphone until you are recognized by the chair.
Brian.
The Finance Committee will meet in regular open session immediately after this public hearing to take a position on warrant articles. Again, this meeting is open to the public. Are there any questions on process? Okay, seeing none. I'm going to move then to the first article, which is Article 17, Minuteman Regional Technical High School District Budget, with Dr. Ed McKillen, the superintendent, presenting.
Thank you, Ms. Reynolds. It's a pleasure to be here in person, not in a parking lot or a football field or an overheated gymnasium. So I'm here to talk to you about our preliminary budget and assessment. I use the word preliminary because the governor's budget, state budget, hasn't passed yet. Next.
He's lost anyway.
Good, thank you.
Next, Chris. So overall, our operating and capital budget is up a little under 4% for FY23. That's wrong, isn't it? It's right? What year are we in? Okay. Yes, I am retiring. But you can see that assessments are up quite a bit, and I'll try to explain that. Next. Our objectives are obviously to keep the health and safety of students and staff our #1 priority, continue to deliver and promote high-quality career and technical education, advance our Minuteman Academy model, which we've been fortunate enough to be operating under for about 6 years, increase enrollment capacity of the facility. Yes, even though it's only a few years old, we have outgrown it. Our athletic fields will be coming online in a few weeks, hopefully, if the weather cooperates, and we have to have a preparation for our facilities use and rentals, and we're going to be closing out the MSBA project. Next. Drivers for the budget are teachers' contract. We're in the 3rd year of a 3-year contract, which calls for 2% cost of living. We're part of a health trust with 4 other regional vocational schools. The trust hasn't finalized its rates as of this time, but we're carrying about a 10% increase. And then increases in transportation, utilities, supplies and materials, as we're all experiencing increases in those. Our OPEB liability, we're trying to get more aggressive in terms of funding that liability, replacing a couple of worksite buses, and continuing to fund our capital stabilization account. Next. So if you break it out just a little bit more, our operating is up about 6.5%. What I call our operating capital, which is really mainly the lighting on the fields and the ESCO lease, are up about 8.5% there. And our MSBA project debt is down really because of the timing of different borrowing. We haven't done our final borrowing, and also some of our interest rates were pretty favorable when we did borrow. Next, please. So Concord's preliminary assessment for our budget is a total of $1.5 million. That includes the project debt service, which was excluded. Next. So looking year over year at the assessment and the components of it, you can see Concord's enrollment has increased, and I'll talk a little bit about enrollment as well. We use a 4-year rolling average to determine assessment. So your enrollment went up 32%, but your total assessment went up, I hesitate to say only, but only 17%. And you can see some of the other required contributions have gone up as well. Next slide, please. Overall enrollment, that's the story of Minuteman lately. Our enrollment has been steadily increasing even before we moved into the new building. But you can see as that gap between the red and the blue line closes, that's the number of member district students are increasing dramatically, I would have to say, over the last couple of years, and it's on track for that. We're projecting, the projections are about 710 students, and Concord would probably be closer to 40 students based upon the information I received just this Monday. So enrollment is increasing, member town enrollment is increasing. Next slide, please. The per pupil assessment over the last few years, we're projecting around $30,000 for Concord per pupil assessment. That does not include the MSBA project debt. Next slide. Again, I'm just emphasizing the overall enrollment is changing. Non-member enrollment is going down. We're projecting in a few years that there will be no non-member students in Minuteman. Next slide. So enrollment has fundamentally shifted in our district. For decades, much of the enrollment for Minuteman was from non-member communities. There were some times in the 90s that more students from outside of the 16 member towns were attending Minuteman than from our own towns. So what this is going to mean is a decreasing amount of tuition revenue and capital fee revenue that will result in the district being supported wholly by its member towns. Next slide. There's a lot going on here, but it really tells the story. The blue line across the top is the millions of dollars that we've had available every year from out-of-district tuition to reduce member town assessments. There's a sort of an orange line on the bottom. That's the money we started collecting in started spending in FY20 that comes from capital fees from non-member communities. This was developed in response to the requirements of the member towns that if you're going to come to Minuteman, you're going to help pay for a new building. And the state agreed with us, and we've been collecting that money, and you can see that trend is downward as well. And again, the little green line across the top is the 628. Next slide. What we tried to do here is just track the assessments for next year based upon the enrollment. And you can see the value of a 4-year rolling average for some towns. For instance, Bolton, which had a 60% increase in enrollment and a 35% increase in total assessments. So it's doing what it was designed to do, is to take the spikes and the dips out of the assessments. Next slide, please. This is per pupil assessment for all the member towns. People like to ask this question, so I provided it. Next slide, please. Enrollment. This is as of a few weeks ago. You can see our total applications as the time this slide was developed was about 358. It actually went up to about 390. Our 9-member towns had about 272 applications, and then out-of-district eligible and ineligible. And we're having to cap the enrollment of the school, the entering freshman class, at 175 this year. If you take a design enrollment and divide it by 4, 628 divided by 4 comes up to about 157. We've just rounded that up because we can accommodate this freshman class. Hopefully, we'll be able to accommodate more freshmen. Just at this point in time, I can't take that many. So this is a huge increase from just 9-member towns, a 65% increase from the 9-member towns over FY19. And FY19 was the last year we had 16-member towns. So you can see the interest and the perception of career and technical education, I think, has shifted for good. Next slide, please. It's a very satisfying shift for someone who's been in it for their whole career. You can see the impact of the loss of out-of-district revenue on the overall budget. All those red rows there are a reflection of that drop in tuition, almost a 19% drop in revenue from all of our sources of revenue. Next slide, please. Again, the budget request. Next slide. Just a little more detail about the budget quickly. We're adding 2 more student support professionals. These are social workers or adjustment counselors. As we all have recognized, the social and emotional impact of the pandemic has been very severe on some families, and many of us believe that this is going to continue. We need to be prepared for that. Minuteman still has a population of about 50% of our students are on IEPs. And we're very proud of the work that they do, and we're here to take care of them. We're adding a program in web teacher that had been a 1-teacher department. We're adding a robotics automation aide as our logistics automation and engineering program expands, an HR support specialist, and we're restoring the library aide over 2 years. Next. These are reductions. There were no active reductions. These were just simply not filling positions that were vacated by retirements or by reorganization. So our net increase in folks is 1.5 full-time equivalents. Next. Cte Budget Priorities. Our animal science program is operating. We have a class of freshmen. Our logistics engineering program is continuing to develop through this budget. Again, shop and material equipment increases, occupational clothing and safety gear for all students, and then we've moved our credentialing costs from grants to the district budget. I call this out just because this is one of the distinctive characteristics of a career and technical high school. These are industry-recognized national credentials that our students achieve prior to graduation. And once they have these credentials in hand, whether they're going on to post-secondary or whether they're going to work, it makes them a much more valuable asset to a potential employer. And some of the costs associated with these credentialing activities are fairly expensive, and we don't want to be burdening students with them. So the district is going to be, our EMT costs, for instance, are $2,500 a student. So next, please. How do we get to 800 beyond the design enrollment without borrowing any more money? We have 2 fundamental strategies. One is to use our capital stabilization account. The other strategy is to develop and leverage the strategic partnerships that we have in place that are developing. Our capital stabilization account, which was formed back in 2016 prior to the building being built, because we knew that the MSBA formulas for equipment, FF&E, furnitures, fixtures, and equipment, were going to be wholly inadequate for a career and technical high school. The formula is a per pupil amount that's really no different than an elementary school, middle school, or high school. So we began putting money away into that capital stabilization account. And in the meantime, the governor got very aggressive with his capital skills grant program, and Minuteman was able to secure, up at this point in time, almost $3 million of additional funding from the state for equipment. So we didn't have to tap into that capital stabilization account in the way that we anticipated. We did use some of that for our fields project. And as of July 1st, we anticipate a balance in that account of 1.4 million. So, and I'll mention again, our MSBA project, it's closing out, but we're gonna have 600,000 left over from that too. So we came in a year early and under budget. Not to mention it took us 12 years to get there, but when we got there, we got it done. So we're using that money to expand an existing foundation on the north side of the building to expand metal fabrication. And over 4 years, that'll add 32 students. Our second renovation project on campus is an existing building. It's 16,000 square feet. It had been a daycare center that was built by Minuteman students back in the 80s. We are working with a veterinary clinic who's interested in opening a real live working clinic on site that would support our animal science program. Back in 2018, Governor Baker signed special legislation for Minuteman that allows Minuteman to enter into long-term ground leases with partners who are compatible with our mission. Half of the building would be used for additional academic space and half of the building would be used for the animal science program. So we're real excited about that. I don't want to make too many announcements about it, but shortly we'll be talking about that even more. That's going to increase our capacity by a minimum of 60 students over the next 4 years. So that gets us to the 800 without borrowing any more money. Next, please. Our OPEB liability as of June 30, 2022, it's about $26 million. 2 years ago, it was $32 million. We have an OPEB trust fund that's pretty anemic in its balance. Next, please. The school committee had a study group, an OPEB study group, that your representative to Concord, Steve Ledoux, was the chair of, and they came up with a number of recommendations. These are the highlights, but we'll be getting more aggressive in our funding of the OPEB trust fund in FY25. That's the same year that our tax-exempt municipal lease, otherwise known as the ESCO project, comes off of our balance sheet, and most of that will be allocated towards the OPEB liability. It's not up here, but in addition, we've agreed to, every new hire, we will fund an additional $10,000 in the budget every year to put towards that OPEB liability component. Next, please. So overall, the Minuteman budget's up about 4.9%. Assessments are up quite a bit more. I hope I've explained why that is. It's really due to the reduction in revenue from non-member tuition. Next slide. There's questions, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions first. So are there any changes in membership expected?
Not in the near term, in terms of adding a town or losing a town.
Or losing, yep. Okay. And from a scale perspective, the 60 students that you'll be able to add from the welding and animal sciences, will that do much to impact assessments or?
Not really, no. We're just kind of filling out what we are able to do. There may be an additional, there will need to be, we calculated about 3 additional staff to accommodate those folks. Science teacher, special ed teacher, and an English teacher.
So the assessments are up 15% this year. Do you think that's the bump year, or are we going to continue to see growth in the assessment at that level?
We've done some projections, and this is a big bump year for Concord. It's not going to be as big in the future because we're, again, filling the enrollment slot allocation of each of the member towns. I will tell you that 26 8th graders applied for enrollment at Minuteman for next fall. 22 were offered in the first round. We have 3 rounds, and 20 have accepted at this point in time. So they're currently 33. I think there's about 8 or 9. So it'll go up, the overall enrollment in Concord. Its share will go up a little bit next year because of that.
What town takes the biggest, is it Arlington still?
Yes.
Yeah. And how are they swallowing the increase?
Pretty well, actually.
Yeah.
I was at their FinCom last week,
Yeah.
and it was unanimous a vote to accept, so.
Okay, thank you. Do other members of the FinCom have questions in the room? Dee?
No, just one question. Could you talk a little bit about the post-secondary numbers
Thanks.
for us?
Yeah. The Minuteman Regional School District operates a day program, the high school. We also oversee the Minuteman Technical Institute, which is a post-secondary program of state-approved Chapter 74 programs. It's growing steadily, and it's really positioned to launch. But we accept students from all of the communities, not just member towns. But we're required on our reporting to the Department of Ed to report post-secondary and postgraduate students. All of them attend Minuteman at night and on Saturdays. Right now, all of those, we're offering 7 programs. 5 of the 7 are operating right now, and they're all full. Again, this administration, state administration, has been funding very aggressively what they call the CTI initiative, Career and Technical Institute initiative. And we've been very fortunate to receive funds there. We're also slated to receive another $500,000 to expand the Minuteman Technical Institute. You know, it's interesting, we're also getting a lot of applications from seniors in high school to attend the Minuteman Technical Institute next year. I don't know how they think of it, as a gap year or something, or, but we're really thrilled about that, and it's a great opportunity for a student to kind of get their feet wet, know what they want to do, you know, answer the 2 basic questions that Minuteman helps you answer. What do I love to do? What do I do well? So.
And just a quick follow-on, with your graduating seniors, do you have the percentages of how many go on to 4-year colleges, 2-year?
We do. Over the last 5 years, about 55% go to a 4-year college. Mm-hmm. Another 10% would go to a 2-year school or a for-profit school, for lack of a better word, and the rest, between 32 and 38%, go right to work. Mm-hmm. A few percent go on to the military, but I think over the last 10 years, we just did this data, we have about a 97% placement rate. And then we follow them up 1 year later, okay. And then we follow them up 3 years later. We're required to, because we receive federal Perkins money. And 1 year later, that we're about 65% are still in school in the major that they started in, or they're still working in the job that they started when they left us.
Thank you.
Great. Dean?
Couple questions. Could you just address briefly what kind of COVID money you received through CARES or ESSER, how that flowed through your budget, what you did with it, and how it helped through the COVID times? Yeah,
I don't have the details. It was about 650 to 700,000 if you put them all together. The number of things that we used them for was we got approval for. We had to adjust some of the requests, but we got offsets our cafeteria services losses, because we fed everyone for no cost for almost a year and a half. We used it to add some student support personnel on a part-time basis, counselors. We used it to fund, I forget what we called it, but when we went remote, I required that all the teachers had to teach from the building, and their children were in other districts, and they were remote, so I wasn't going to ask them to leave their kids home alone. So we took that building that I showed you or talked about for the animal science, and we turned it into a facilitated learning program. and hired licensed teachers to oversee my staff's family kids doing their remote lessons from campus. That was a large expense, but it was necessary to kind of relieve some of the anxiety that everybody was feeling teaching remotely. Those are the big ticket items.
Thank you. Another question. In your expansion plan, you talked about the different buckets from which funding could be found. One of them you indicated was about $600,000 of what I think might be an unused debt authorization from building the building in the first place. Is that?
We haven't borrowed the full amount for the building, so that hasn't, yes.
Yes, so you have the authorization to do so, but you haven't done that.
Correct.
What's the governance model that allows, that MSBA would allow for you to finish your project, have remaining debt authorization, and then just do other things with that? Is that, I'm just
We
not
had to get
clear.
approval.
Let me just stop for 1 second and I'll finish. We're in the process of building a new school ourselves. And it would not be my hope to see if we come in under budget that we just go off and do other things with the money because we have authorization to have money. So that's why I'm asking that question.
In our conversations with the MSBA about having surplus funds, we've always asked to use those funds to continue the building project. In other words, there were some components of the project that we put in our original 3011 budget that we weren't able to get to. And as we got closer to the end of the project and your quarterly reporting or whatever, we would let the MSBA know that we want to use these funds that were originally in this line item towards our athletic fields. So we went through a process with the school building committee and with MSBA, and then finally our school committee with making those votes.
Thank you. One more question, and that's just about the way in which the student population flows. To what degree do students kind of come in mid 4 years or leave after, like they've been there 2 years, this really isn't for me, I'm going to go back to my district or whatever? What kind of turnover in that kind of unanticipated? Like we expect somebody comes in as a freshman, they're going to run through till senior year.
I think it's about 95% of the students that start with us as freshmen end up graduating. Transfers we take in if we have room. We haven't had room in the lower grades this year, and because of the nature of the career and technical curriculum, we really can't take students older than sophomores, because they would be non-completers. They wouldn't be there long enough to get the proficiency and the competencies that are required for them to get a Minuteman certificate of completion in addition to their high school diploma. So there's not a lot of...
Thank you.
Mary?
I have a detailed question. I wonder if we could take a quick look at the 6.57% increase in your operating spending, if we could look at that again.
Well, Chris has control of that. What, do you know?
It was at the beginning of the deck.
This one?
No, it was the detail behind that 6.57%. Keep going. There you go. No.
Slide 4 or 5, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. There you go. There you go. Right there.
Yes.
Okay, so now what are the big things that are making this go up by 6.57%? So teachers' contracts are 2%. If you were to add the steps and the levels, what do you think that number would be?
About 4.7%.
Ah, that's a big increase. Okay. Okay, health insurance, utilities is going up. Okay, thank you.
Brian?
Just a quick question. You had mentioned you have 26 eighth graders teed up for...
20 Concord eighth graders have accepted enrollment in the first round.
Okay.
And
Okay.
26 had applied.
Okay. And in terms of oversubscriptions, how do you guys think about that? If the enrollment rate is going to hit 800 in the fall of 2023, and it seems like you guys are on a nice track to increase your subscription. How does overcapacity work in terms of who gets chosen and who doesn't?
Oh, you're talking about the admissions policy. This year is the first year of a revised admissions policy. All regional vocational schools were required to revise their policy, and the school committee went through a long process of revising the answer to that question. So students apply, and they're evaluated objectively by grades, attendance, discipline, a personal interview, and a recommendation. And the sending school scores those things for us. So, and then the students are given a number, and the first round, which we just completed this week, we fill all of the allocations per town. So the town of Concord has an allocation that's based in large part on how your capital allocation is calculated.
That's what I wanted to know. Okay.
Yeah, which is in the the regional agreement. So we followed that for this. Now, so what happens, we offered 180 students enrollment. So far, 165 have accepted yes. So now we go out to the second round of students, and that is pooled. So no matter what the openings may be in slot allocations, we go to the pool, and the students that are ranked that way are offered admission until the third round. If there are any more openings, then we would offer admission again. If not, it could be late August when there may be an opening, and then we would go to that master list again.
Thank you.
It's not satisfying to do any of that. Every kid who wants it should get it.
Okay, I think those are all the questions from Finance Committee. Do we have any questions in the room?
Carmen Reese, 52 Devon Street, Town Moderator. First, I want to thank Dr. Pupil for his incredible lengthy service to Minuteman and congratulate him on his retirement. Thank you so much for what you've done for the district.
Thanks.
And I did have just one, and I have to say the new building is really the crowning jewel, isn't it?
It's beautiful.
There was one slide that showed that there's a different per capita cost for students depending on what town the student comes from. And I believe that's the result of the difference in formula, which takes into account a sort of ability to pay factor. And I think that it would be worth just kind of explaining that in the presentation that gets made at town meeting. I'm guessing that people might wonder about that.
Good point. Thanks, Carmen. Thank you for your work with Minuteman, too.
Any other questions in the room? Okay. Do we have any questions on Zoom?
Got 16 people online, and I'm not seeing any hands up right now.
Okay, thank you. I think we're all set then. Dr. Pupil, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you. And over the years, I've got to say I appreciate Concord's support and your really challenging questions. You need to know what you're talking about up here. Thank you.
Good. Okay. We go next to Article 18, Concord Public Schools Budget. And Dr. Hunter, are you presenting or is Jared presenting?
Jared is essentially, but I'll open it up.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Hi, everyone. So welcome. It's great to be, I'm here in person. Jared's at home, so we're maximizing efficiencies with the technology, as are a few school committee members in person, obviously, Court and Cynthia, and I think there's others on the call. So we're happy to be here tonight to talk on our proposed operating budgets and give you updates as to where we are in those processes, as well as the capital articles. So we're in fairly good standing at this point with the high school operating budget, and we're actually under guideline, still in discussion at CPS. The capital article at CPS is within the town manager's budget as usual, and we do have a separate regional warrant article this year for capital project at the high school. So I'm going to turn it over to Jared, and he'll go through those in order of articles, and we're looking forward to our dialogue.
Thank you.
Great. Hi, everybody. I'm going to share the screen right now. Great. Can you see that?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, good evening. So we'll be presenting 4 articles tonight, starting with Article 18, the Concord Public Schools budget. The first slide is just our budget timeline, and we are now here at March 10th, the Finance Subcommittee, Finance Committee public hearing, and then May 1st will be the Concord Annual Town Meeting. The recommended budget for FY23 is $43,148,899, which is 3.45% higher than FY23's. And I have to pause for a brief second. I printed out the wrong note. My apologies there. One quick second. Sorry about that. Lovely. Great. Sorry about that. So the, as I said, the FY20.
Jared, we're looking at your script.
Oh. You see that now?
There you go.
Yep.
All right. It was a wonderful thing. It's going up already. So the FY23 budget is $43,148,899, which is 3.45% more than FY22's approved budget. This is currently $312,585 above the Finance Committee's guideline. The 1,000 function includes all the salaries and expenditures for administration, IT, HR, and other central office-based staff. The 2,000 function includes salaries for teachers, assistants and tutors, the principals and assistant principals, our substitute costs, school curriculum costs, school supplies and materials, special education contract services, and equipment. Teacher salaries and longevity account for $1,326,853 of the $1,796,425 increase you're seeing in this function. The 3,000 function includes our transportation expenses, nurses, athletics, and student activities. The largest cost driver is due to special ed transportation costs, which are going up $125,196. The 4,000 function includes all of our maintenance costs. And last year, we negotiated with both our custodial and maintenance unions. Fixed charges include the teacher retirement incentive and our teacher sick leave buyback costs. These two lines are decreasing a combined $142,780. The community service function is all of our private school transportation salaries. 3.67 FTEs are dedicated to these runs. Fixed assets include our bus leases. We budgeted for 2 new bus leases in FY23 as part of our 10-year replacement plan. And lastly, special education tuition lines are reducing $603,459 from FY22's budget. Tuitions are down $366,680, and our offsets are going up due to increases in circuit breaker as well as the IDEA grant. We've identified $2,150,750 in budget drivers made up of 9 different budget categories. For something to be considered a budget driver, the expense type category must increase by $50,000 or more. A cost savings is the same thing, except a decrease of $50,000 or more. This year, there are 40 expense categories in the CPS budget, and 13 of them are salary categories. The first is our largest budget driver, teacher salaries. Next, special ed teams have done a great job creating programs to keep children in district. As these programs have grown, we needed additional staff. Most of the additional FTEs are for programs at Thoreau. The support staff lines or non-salary unions are increasing due to salary increases, and we also restored a position in central office. Custodial maintenance are just contractual increases. Principals and assistant principals were identified as a budget driver mainly due to COLA increases for FY22 that were a bit higher than budgeted. In addition, we budgeted some funds for an assistant principal's mentor in anticipation of an impending retirement. Contract services are up 4.32%, mostly due to some increases in special ed contract services needed to keep children in district. And lastly, teacher stipends have increased due to special ed summer training for research and development, DEI building leads, and an increased teacher mentoring. To offset budget drivers, we've identified $856,482 in budget drivers and cost savings. Here are the special ed tuition savings broken down. Sick leave and early retirement savings, as well as curriculum instruction savings. The FY23 recommended budget includes 419.6 FTEs, which is 11.55 FTEs more than the FY22 budget. We've budgeted approximately $35,625,489 on staffing in the general fund. The only FTEs not included in this total is our CAF workers who are paid out of the food service revolving account, which is self-funded in non-COVID times. We have about 8.5 FTEs charged to the CPS food service revolving account. We budgeted approximately $445,000 in our total CPS MECO allocation towards salaries. Other expenses in MECO grants include small supplies and material allocations, contract services, and the rest of the transportation supplies and materials such as fuel and insurance. We reduced guidance salaries in FY23, the general fund portion, and we'll be charging them to the special education MECO grant. And we use our Title I monies on tutor salaries and set aside approximately $139,000. And lastly, we charge preschool teacher salaries to the preschool revolving account, and we estimate this to be about $140,000. Here are the breakdown of the special education tuitions. We have just over 1.25 in non-public tuitions and about 250,000 in collaborative tuitions. Therefore, the total budgeted amount in the general fund is $1,507,517 in special education tuitions. And lastly, in the general fund budget, we include our tuition offsets for circuit breaker as well as IDEA. Right now, the circuit breaker offset is $725,000. That is a bit of a gamble at this time, but we do feel that we will have money that will carry over into FY24 or FY23 to cover any overages that we may need. We currently have 14 out-of-district students. About 2 or 3 years ago, this number was approximately tripled, if not more. So the special ed department has done an amazing job keeping kiddos in district and creating multiple programs at all of our schools. Here's a chart of our estimated savings due to the early retirement incentive. When someone retires, they are at the top of their lane, and we bring in the replacement for around $75,000. And as you can see, these numbers speak for themselves, and the incentive did pay dividends. CPS has 22 buses, 2 of which are wheelchair buses. The oldest of the fleet are from 2008. Currently, we are getting 2 buses through leases, and 2 bus leases are falling off. We currently have 2 electric buses. The newest one was delivered in November, and it's still going through inspection, and hopefully will be on the road very, very soon. We have 26.73 transportation driver FTEs at Concord. 19.37 are for in-district runs. 3.68 are designated for MECO runs, and another 3.68 are designated for the private. Overall, the preschool budget location is going up 0.55% from the FY22 budget. We have a total of 15.87 FTEs in our preschool program. 6.8 of these FTEs are teachers. While the tutor line here is increasing 11.14%, we've had some changes in personnel from who was budgeted versus who filled the positions. In addition, the cost of living increase was a bit more than budgeted. The contract services are special education related and are being moved to the district-wide location. This will be the theme throughout the presentation. And lastly, the curriculum instruction line is now consolidated in also the district-wide location. Overall, the elementary budget location is going up 7.02%. We have a total of 15.2 FTEs in the district-wide elementary location. This is an increase of 1.0, which is for a new curriculum academic coordinator that is being requested. Savings for this is coming from curriculum PD lines, which you'll see when we get to the district-wide location. In addition, we budgeted for a retirement at $75K, but the replacement for this position was filled by an existing employee who was higher on the salary scale. So therefore, there's a savings, but it's realized in the school location where the employee used to work. And we recently reduced the nurses line due to an anticipated salary savings. The Alcott location is going up 3.45%. We have a total of 69.95 FTEs budgeted here, which is an increase of 1.81. Contract services, again, are being moved to district-wide. Curriculum instruction accounts are going down 47.27%, primarily due to the savings in software. Teachers are going up 1.0 due to the need for a new special education teacher for the branch program. And lastly, we are projecting approximately a 5% increase in utilities. Thoreau is going up 6.95%. The request for FY23 is for 85.84 FTEs, which is 9 more than we budgeted in FY22. Due to current special education needs and programs, our assistants and tutor lines are going up 7 FTEs. These were additions for this year and last year after last year's budget was approved. To help support these programs, we have also added an additional special education teacher. In addition, due to projected K class sizes, we will have a need for another kindergarten section. Also, for the same reasons as Alcott, contract services and curriculum instructions are down. Supplies and materials are up mainly due to everyday math. And lastly, we are projecting also a 5% increase in utilities. The Willard location is decreasing 0.73%. FY23's request also includes a reduction of 3.86 FTEs from FY22, but two of the tutors FTEs will be following the students to the middle school, so that will account for 2 of the middle school increases. Our teachers line, they're decreasing 0.5 due to a reduction of a 1.0 FTE K teacher due to current numbers. but the speech and language pathologist line increased 0.5 FTE, but this person works some hours around the district at other schools, but is budgeted at the Willard as his home base. So that's how you get the 1.0. For the same reasons as the other two elementary schools, contract services and curriculum instructions are down. And lastly, utilities again are up 5%. Middle school location overall is going up 4.85% and a total of 2.4 FTEs in FY23. Like the elementary schools, the middle school's portion of special education contract services are being moved to district-wide. Curriculum instruction is also decreased due to the reductions in math and social studies textbook lines. The tutor and assistant lines are decreasing a total of 1. In salary administration, the director of student services is moving to district-wide, but this is a wash. The tutors and assistants are reducing a total of 2. There is an increase overall of 3.4 FTEs in the teachers' lines. Due to special education needs, this budget includes 3 additional special education teachers and an additional adjustment counselor. One special education teacher was added after the FY22 was done. Then we are requesting a language-based teacher through the ESSER fund. And lastly, a request for an ASD position. There are some other moving parts in English, world languages, social studies, and science that make the overall increase 3.4. And lastly, as the theme throughout, utilities are increasing 5%. The district-wide location is increasing 1.85% and 1.2 total FTEs. Contract services are the largest increase in this location. We consolidated all of the special ed lines in this location. The interim special ed director zero-based all special ed needs throughout the district, and this was the result. Case transportation costs are projected to go up $110,000 based on their formula, which is based on ridership from 2 years ago. Professional development is up 6.67% overall. Special education PD increased $81,000, but curriculum staff development decreased $48,000, which is helping to offset their academic coordinator. The administration line is up 0.6 FTE due to the DEI director that was added in FY22. Our tutors and assistants line is up 0.5 FTE due to the need for a special ed bus monitor. And the substitute line is up 20,000, but this is because we reduced all the special ed subs in the schools and brought them to this location. So that is not an overall increase, that is a wash. Our teachers category is up 15.34%. We reduced 0.6 district-wide speech, but we increased the CPS side of the special ed coordinator. 0.6 because this person is now K through 8, but was budgeted K through 12 in FY22. This is not an overall added position, but an increased cost to CPS and a decrease to the high school. Also, K to 5 grade level chairs are now district-wide and moved out of their locations. This was an additional increase. Sick leave and early retirement savings are showing here. The special education decreases are also shown here. The mentoring, special ed research and development training, and the DEI leads account for the increase in the stipend. And that is the district-wide location. Here's a summary. It was a summary of what has been spent to date in the CARES Act as well as the ESSER funds. As part of the American Rescue of 2021, CPS received $995,840 for ESSER 3. The funds are available through September 30th, 2024. Fund requirements include district plan to safely reopen the schools, spending 20% of the funds to mitigate lost instructional time, a plan as to how to spend the remaining 80%, consultation with stakeholders to determine the local priorities, assurances of how interventions will respond to academic, social, emotional, and mental health needs, consideration of those disproportionately impacted, including low-income families, students of color, English learners, and students with disabilities. And the deadline for the grant submission was October 4th, and does not require a breakdown of the allocation into yearly increments. After a survey was developed and distributed to staff and families, the following expenditures on this slide became the priority. And that is the Article 18 presentation.
Okay, thank you, Jared.
A lot of information there.
I have a couple of questions, and then we can open it up. So on the, can you, my favorite subject is circuit breaker. So circuit breaker, we have 650,000, is that right?
725.
Oh, it's more than that, okay, 720, no, that's what you deducted from the 1.5 million in the, from the tuitions, but the balance in the actual revolving account
Correct.
is 650.
So FY21's carryover. Did I stop sharing the screen? I just want to make sure.
You're fine, we can see you, yep.
Excellent. The FY21 carryover was that amount, correct?
Right. So what happens to that?
So you have to use that first. So whatever we got this year, which is approximately that amount, you can only carry over what you received in FY22. So say we received 600,000 this year, we can only carry over the amount that was received in that current fiscal year.
And how can it be used?
So we can offset tuitions with that amount.
Okay, so is there a reason why we don't use it up?
It's good strategy for really every district, especially the ones that I've been a part of, to try and carry over as much circuit breaker as possible. Getting it to zero is your contingent. It's really your contingency for any unknowns, any tuitions, or any students that move in. In addition, you can also use that money to prepay for the future year as well.
Right. So if you're from the amount of tuition that you pay is how much? Is it 2 or 3 million?
So the amount is we budgeted about 1.5 million, which was zero base. So for FY23, we're about 1.5 million. In this year is a little bit more, but we have there's some savings with students aging out and bringing kiddos back.
Okay, so 650,000 on $1.5 million in tuition is a pretty big contingency, would you say?
I would say 2 or 3 kids could wipe that out. So I don't actually. I think that's a really good contingency for a circuit breaker in a non-region that does not have E&D as a backup.
Yeah, it's very standard practice to carry, every business manager is aiming to carry over a full year's amount. In fact, the years we dropped down or went to zero, part of our bond rating issue at the high school was E&D was down and we had no circuit breaker money. So it's considered a stabilization account essentially, so that if you get unexpected tuitions, you have a place to go without, certainly at CPS, we don't want to be coming back for supplemental warrants because we didn't have any other options.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. The school lunch revolving account, Jared?
Yes.
So that has 240,000 in it?
Correct.
How is that going to be spent?
So right now it's about 3 or 4 months worth of expenses. And that's something that we're working with the food service director on. That is something that is sort of a result of the pandemic. We wanted to move monies back into that due to the low participation, especially in FY20 and FY21. I do not anticipate having that higher of a balance going into FY23, and I can see that this balance will go down in future years. So it can only be used on food service expenses, salaries, obviously food, equipment. We can charge a little bit of health insurance to that at the region side. We don't pay the health insurance at the CPS side.
And how did it get so big? Did we put surplus in there? How did it get so large?
Yeah, so I inherited a very, very healthy food service balance. And we in FY20 as well as FY21, because we were not getting a ton of revenue, we charged some of the expenses as well as some of the salaries to the general fund to bring that up. If we did not do that, we probably would be in the red for those 2 years. So we were able to charge back money to the general fund to do that.
Okay, thank you. Mary.
Thanks. I'm hoping that you can help me think through something that's stymied me since I got on the Finance Committee. And it's this. The Finance Committee uses the guideline process, and we think as a way to keep property taxes what we think are reasonable, which is about 3%. And especially, that's especially important now because we're looking at a 6 to 7% increase in property tax because of the middle school. So about a 3% property tax is something that we feel that that's important. And when we look at the overall town budget, well over half of that is spent on education, and about 3/4 or 77% of that is instructional. So I guess the problem I see is that if our instructional budget is determined by contractual obligations, and that's coming in at 5%. How do we get from something that has a huge impact on our overall budget that's running at a 5% rate to a 3% reasonable property tax increase? See where I'm going?
I do.
So, and I know that what we've done in the past is we found offsets in savings. I saw you have retirement savings. You've done a great job as far as bringing SPED in so that we can save some money there and still do a really good job. So what are some other ideas that you've got that we could, in fact, bridge that gap between our contractual obligations and a reasonable property tax increase?
Jared, gonna grab that first?
I'll let you go and this. That was a really good question, though.
You know, I think, Mary, we're always trying to come up with new ways. You know, the retirement incentive was a really creative idea, 4 and 5 years ago that really fleshed out the way we were hoping. Special education was sitting there as an educational need first and foremost, which happened to have some really strong fiscal benefit. Our hope this year is to finish that continuum so that we can truly grow confidence that we have the full range of programming. Right now, we have some spots in the middle school that we don't have an exit place for the kids who are in the elementary school programs to go to. So in some ways, those asks are this year meant to be a means to offset costs coming forward. Should those kids who have been with us start to go out of district, that will be a financial impact. So we're always looking. Can I say I've got the next best idea? Not yet, but we're going to keep trying and trying to figure it out. We do bring you the you're right, it's a 4.5% increase in staff every year. Yep. And we have consistently brought you budgets that come in well under that because we find these savings and these offsets, and that's a commitment we have going forward. So I can't say I've identified it, but we definitely are still in that mode and in that mindset. I think just the other thing I must mention, because it continues to be an ongoing factor, the climate and culture of the schools money is now part of the vernacular discussion with teachers, with principals. When I walked in 5 years ago, there was not a lot of talk about that. If they asked for things, they just appeared and there wasn't as much discussion of let's do this in a cost savings way. How much can we trade something out instead of just adding on? It's a very different fiscal mindset, which I think going forward will continue to benefit us. So do I have the next best project figured out yet? No. But the culture and climate of the schools is now very fiscally minded while serving students very successfully and will continue to be so. And we're pretty out of the box thinkers so far, so we're going to keep at that.
Yeah. And I'll jump on that just a little bit too. And I 100% agree with Dr. Hunter on that. Not that they weren't looking for cost savings with spending when I got here, but everyone has jumped in, especially with the zero-based budget process. One thing is sort of every single district has the same issues that Concord does when it comes to salaries. Salaries in any district is going up between, say, 4 and 6%. In this district, while the base is higher, it's only going up, between, say, 4 and 6%. It's probably closer to the 4% mark. Also, most of our teachers, 66% of our teachers in both districts, give or take, are on the top of their scale. So they're only getting COLA. So while it does look like there is a large increase in the teacher costs and the staff costs, there are significant percentage increases in other districts that are significantly higher than the ones that we're seeing. So it is a problem for every single district. You just hope to find savings every year. And lastly, special ed has been the savings for the past 3 years. And as you saw in the slide tonight with 14 students that are out of district right now, continuing to build these programs, which was what Dr. Hunter started, 2 or 3 years ago, has absolutely worked and paid dividends. And I think that's going to continue because those are going to be your biggest increases, really the special ed costs and the salaries. But if you can contain the special ed costs, that's going to serve you going forward.
Does anyone else have questions for Dr. Hunter? Dee?
Just a couple of quick ones for Jared. Jared, did you have any unusual or unanticipated budget drivers this year?
Let's see. I didn't. It was, it was mostly, teachers, obviously, which is anything over 50,000, teachers, other salaries for assistants and tutors and non-union. Contract services, which is usually a significant cost driver, especially, 3-4 years ago, and especially when Dr. Hunter came in, those only went up, 53,000. So no, I'd say there were really no surprises this year.
Dee, I'll just add, after, 2 years of COVID, it's a real pleasure to build a budget with less moving pieces and a little more predictability.
Yeah,
So,
I can imagine. Yeah. My other question is, Jared, what is your biggest economic fear for the upcoming year?
Obviously, supply and material costs, inflation, contract services going up, the uncontrollables every year. That is certainly my biggest. But, that's only 15% of the budget, give or take. But those are always, it's really the supplies and materials, I would say. That would be, and obviously utility costs, transportation costs for gas and diesel.
Yeah. Okay, what about your electricity? Can you just expand on that a bit?
Sure. So we're doing is as much as we can to keep those costs down, such as replacing the ERUs. We did budget 5%, which I feel is a modest increase. We went back to the 2019 usages because really the last 2 years, really for everything, the last 2 years we kind of threw out and built everything off FY19. So I think that I think this year is sort of a guess. And when they build the budget for FY24, using the FY22 actuals for utilities, hopefully the world is in a better place, and you know, costs for gas will be down. So I think the 5% is a good placeholder, but I think you're really going to have to look at the FY22 actuals to get a real sense for next year.
Thank you.
Don?
Hi, a couple of quick questions for you. First is about the contract services consolidation, that budget. Just to be sure I'm on the right page, did you make adjustments then to the individual school budgets so that it didn't appear as a savings?
Correct. So in each elementary school, as well as the middle school, we had special ed contract services, anywhere from 40,000 to 75,000. And this was a 3-year project that we tried to move out because it's very confusing to have, you know, you should only have one line for that. The special ed administrator can keep track of that line by breaking it out by school. So what we did is we moved everything out, contract services for special ed, and moved them into a district-wide line. So in a way, it was a wash, but we zero-based it every year. So, but we did move it out of the school. So it does obviously drop the increase in each school's budget and increased it a little bit in district-wide, but we've had some special education tuition savings that are in district-wide that kind of made that number only be the 1.85% increase.
So to be sure I followed that, so then the increases at the individual schools would have been higher if not for that consolidation?
Correct. Yep.
Not what I expected. Second then is the Alcott and Thoreau show 6 or 7% increases while Willard is flat. What's the difference?
The special education programming, we've added staff to be able to accommodate more of those intensive needs of students, more so at Alcott and Thoreau, the number of programs, the number of sections, and the type of disabilities we're servicing in those two schools versus Willard, which has a smaller program and a different staffing need for the type of student needs.
Would it be possible to know what the apples to apples increases are then without the accounting?
Oh, to pull out those variables?
Well, simply moving one line into a consolidated budget isn't a savings, but that gives the impression that of a savings.
So I want to be sure we're answering the exact question. Are you still on contracted services?
Right.
Yeah, so the answer is still related to the special education programs. So we can break out the contracted service for you if you want to see the
No, what
detail.
I'm asking is what's the real spending? Comparing this year's accounting to last year's accounting.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Jared, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, I mean, we just released our budget books, and in the appendix, there is the apples to apples. So you can see what was spent in FY21 in the special ed contract services line, and then what was moved out. So we do have actuals in there, FY21 compared to FY22 budgeted compared to FY23 budgeted. And when we post these slides online as well, it does have, you know, the percentage increase as well as, you know, the overall. So there is a full 1 year actuals. And then if you went back, you know, which is also posted online to the FY21 budget books, we do have obviously FY20 actuals that you can also take a look.
Okay, thank you.
Dean?
I'm just interested in the way in which you account for the salary line, which goes up 5+% this year, and you also have as a separate accounting item the early retirement program. If those were netted, what would the salary line go up by?
I think and it's tough to do that exactly, but I think so. We projected about a $550,000 saving overall in FY23 due to the early retirement incentive. I think that's a conservative increase. I think it is higher because what you really, you're replacing, in theory, someone that's between, 115 and 125,000 plus, anywhere from a $1,000 to $2,000 longevity increase. At CPS, it's higher at in the past at the region. With someone that, in some cases 75, some cases a little bit higher, but the net is roughly 75,000, if not lower. So what we did is we took, the number of FTEs, times it by approximately a $50,000 saving. And then we just followed that all the way through to FY23. So we didn't project a $50,000 saving every year with the people that left. We reduced it based on, where they would be on that step and scale. And we still came up with, an estimate of about $554,646. So there was a method to that. I do think that, and who knows if people would have retired or not, you can't really think that way, but based on what the number of people that took it, based on what their salary was, based on what we hired at, I think this $550,000 is a conservative number.
So I guess the question is, you have a line item for salary increases, and it's a number, and the percentage I recall is over 5. Could you net that increase number against the projected savings that you're seeing, that you're anticipating in the early retirement program, and see the overall net salary increase be a much smaller number? I'm just trying to understand how these two things relate to each other. One of them shows up as a budget driver for increases, and the other one shows up as a budget driver for savings. So I'm just, do they net against each other or not? Are they completely distinct in the way the budgeting works?
Yeah. So the 5.8% in, say, teachers, that is actual. That is, based on what was budgeted in FY22 versus what was budgeted in FY23. So had that early retirement incentive not been offered, you might be looking at a significantly higher budget driver.
Okay, so now I'm getting somewhere. So the savings that are shown as a budget savings in the driver's savings side are already included in the number that we're seeing in the budget driver side, in the the increase side. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. I have a follow-on to Mary's question, Dr. Hunter. So it's a $43 million budget. How tight is it? So when we're looking for where savings can come from, so how much room is there? That's a big budget, right?
Yeah, we've been back through it. We did take some risks in this budget that I think are worth naming, and I think answered your question to some extent. In terms of enrollment, you probably heard Jared reference kindergarten enrollment several times through the presentation. We are looking at a slow decline to enrollment, and so I have cut 2 kindergarten teachers in this budget. I have to see if the enrollments hold for that. I'm hopeful they will. If they don't, I'll be looking for contingency or having to figure it out another way to add teachers back. So that's one risk that we took is based on the enrollments and looking at that. Another risk that we took is the special education tuitions, budgeting at a child per child level and not building in. Some districts will build in a placement without a name on it in case you get one. We did not do that, so our contingencies would be the contingency line or circuit breaker. We all know special ed tuitions, a student moves into a large tuition, we will quickly be into looking at one of those 2 options because the line doesn't have any wiggle room to it. The other thing that we did was count on a few retirements, some of which have happened so far, and a couple that haven't yet. So there's some risk taken there. So we took some of those risks. That's what now with utilities being a little more variable than we expected them to be when we built the budget, that's another layer. So those are my risk factors going into the budget in the places that it is now. We did dip into circuit breaker a little bit as we've tried to get these numbers closer to guideline. We are using Metco money to offset some things, trying to make sure we don't create a cliff, but trying to bring the number down to guideline. So we're also looking at the revenue side. So those are all the variables and moving pieces. The part that we haven't gotten into at this point is looking at student services and any reductions. The increase in services is essentially the special ed pieces that we've spoken about. We did take cuts across supplies and materials as well. We've been kind of on a ebb and flow with supplies and materials. We closed and then we didn't use anything. So we built our inventories up and we were able to drop those numbers a bit last year. And then we built them back up and now we are trying to stabilize it. And so we dropped them again a bit now. So there's a little risk there because we zero-based it, but there's not room for the unexpected or the unplanned for. So we've been pretty deep in looking at all these buckets, trying to do our best to make sure we've considered each and every one of them.
Okay, thank you. Any questions in the room for Dr. Hunter or Jared?
Matt Johnson, 21 Winthrop Street, also a member of the select board, speaking for myself. Living in Concord, I've gotten accustomed to six-figure teacher salaries. I guess we're now at about 107 plus per teacher on average. And I'm actually kind of proud of that, just given the role that teachers play in how they're compensated in other parts of our society. But I was struck by a few of the other salary lines. For example, preschool teachers came in per FTE at about $88,000. And middle school support staff came in at $82,000 per FTE. And janitorial services came in at $88,000. So are these competitive salary levels? I mean, I don't work in that area, but they struck me as being high. And I don't know if there are opportunities with the early retirements or something like that, but it just seems like those services, again, often underappreciated and undercompensated, but in our case, seem to be very well compensated, if not above market.
So Jared can help me answer. I'll answer the first part. Preschool is a very small program, so it skews fairly quickly just based on who's there. It's also because they're small and it's a special needs program first and foremost, and then the tuition kids are the general education side. So it also comes with a high student to staff ratio, the age of the kids and their disabilities. So I think the mix of those things probably skews it a little bit. We only have 4 classrooms. So comparing it across the rest of the budget isn't exactly apples to apples. And Jared, do you want to talk on the other?
Yes, sorry, someone just came to my door. So the custodial, well, preschool also, I'm not sure where you saw that number, but the preschool, also we have an offset of 140,000. So if you took the FTEs and you divided that by that preschool teacher cost, actually 140,000 of that is being offset by the revolving account. So that might answer your preschool question. When it comes to custodians, the hourly rate is not 80,000 or what you said. I would say the hourly rate is around salary-wise 62 to 65, not including head custodians. They get a little bit more. There is obviously overtime, but the hourly rate is definitely, it's not an outlier in surrounding towns. It's competitive, but it's not any much higher than the surrounding towns.
And then when you talk about support staff at the middle school, what type of positions are those?
Sure. So that also too, that's for the most part, that's the secretarial contract. Same as custodians. While it's competitive, it's also not an outlier. So yeah.
Okay, these are, it's just much higher than I've experienced, I guess, in industry for those kinds of roles. Thanks.
Sure.
Okay, seeing no other folks at the microphone here in the room, are there any questions on Zoom?
We've got 16 online, and there are no hands raised.
Okay, great. Chris. Oh, sorry. Carmen.
Carmen Reese, 52 Devon Street. Just a presentation question. Is this the format that you anticipate making your town meeting presentation in, with the complete charts and so forth?
If we know, we need to go back and look at the template and make sure and get your feedback on it, so we're happy for that.
Okay. I think it's great that there's so much information that's being presented, but the slides are very dense, so it is hard to follow the oral presentation with the slide. And I would say, if anyone's got the technological skill to animate the slides for a moving yellow highlighter line, that would be fantastic. Otherwise, at a minimum, I think you need to number the lines so that in the oral presentation you can mention what line you're talking about. Otherwise, it's tough to follow.
These need consolidation too, because we'll never make your time limit with what we have right now. So,
We'll talk.
thank you.
My apologies. Every year when it comes to the public hearing, I normally do the school committee presentation. And then when we go to town meeting, we take these and we do it in 5 or 6 budget slides. So it won't be close to this long. We just give the school committee presentation at the hearings.
Okay, so we're going to go on now to Article 19, the capital projects.
Great. So Article 19, the Concord Public Schools capital projects. This is for $900,000, and this is all under the town manager's budget. We have 6 requests for FY23, starting with carpet and tile replacement at our elementary schools. This is part of a 4-year plan. In addition, a high efficiency condensing boiler at the Alcott. This hopefully will save us in utility fees going forward, utility costs going forward. An integrated playground at Thoreau, $55,000. This would help with monies that we already have that would be needed to complete this project. And then flooring at Ripley, and sidewalk replacements and paving at Ripley as well. And then every single year we have a contingency for the middle school life and safety for anything that could potentially happen. And hopefully this will go away will go away as soon as the new middle school opens up. So again, all of these are under the town manager's budget. We do a 5-year capital plan every single year, and we work on it every year and redo it. And these were the priorities for FY23.
Is that it?
That is it.
Okay.
A quick one. I made up some time there.
Okay, good. Any questions from the Finance Committee on the 900,000?
In the replacement project for the boiler, was any consideration given to the problem of climate change and the potential for some kind of heat pump system to, fix the problem that we're all facing, which is the planet is warming? What can we do? And we're going to replace the boiler anyway. Was there any alternative to just replacing it with a new high efficiency condensing, probably natural gas boiler?
Yes, and Russ Hughes could certainly answer that much better than I can. This was part of his project, but it's definitely for energy conservation. There will be a big savings, no asbestos. And I can get, I can get you a little bit more information on what he was thinking there.
Okay, Don?
Yeah, just wondering whether it's appropriate to be capitalizing any repairs at the middle school, given that they have very limited life.
We do as bare minimum at the middle school as possible. Do you want to talk, Jared, on anything?
Yeah, this is truthfully, this is contingency. You know, every year there's something that happens, whether it's a leak, whether it's a backup in the septic. There's always something. So we budget 50 for each school every year, and oftentimes it's more than that. So again, it's contingency. It's not for any big capital items.
I think Don's question is a little different though, right? So this is supposed to be a capital budget. If those are maintenance items, why are they in that budget?
It's a contingency for any repairs that are going to be considered capital. So in our definition of capital, anywhere from $25,000 to $50,000 in fixing these issues, that's what that would be used for. So that meets the definition of capital. It's unidentified, except it's for, you know, we call it the life and safety and health repairs.
Okay. Anyone else have questions on the capital from FinCom? Okay. Does anyone in the room have questions on Article 19? Anyone on Zoom?
We've got 15 participants and no questions.
Okay. I think that's it then. Thank you, Dr. Hunter and Jared. And we'll move to Article 20, which is me. Okay. Here we go. Okay, Article 20 is an appropriation to Stabilization Fund. Article 20 asks the town to transfer $1.5 million into the existing Debt Stabilization Fund to offset future property tax increases associated with the new middle school building. $1 million would be transferred from the assessor's overlay surplus account, and $500,000 would be transferred from free cash. Next slide. A few background points. Concord, like many towns, has used debt stabilization funds to offset the impact of tax increases associated with large building projects. Concord used the stabilization fund in connection with the high school building project. In anticipation of the middle school project, the town voted to transfer $2 million into a stabilization fund in September 2020. In November 2021, the Board of Assessors declared $1 million in the overlay account as surplus. In February 2022, the town approved a Proposition 2.5 debt exclusion for $102.8 million in connection with the middle school project. Next slide. The middle school debt will double Concord's debt service payments. For fiscal '22, the median tax bill includes approximately $1,000 for debt service, primarily related to school projects. In fiscal '25, with the new middle school debt service, this amount would increase by an estimated $900, or almost double. The town's existing obligations, while declining over time as principal is repaid, do not materially decline until fiscal '29 or '30, 4 to 5 years after the middle school debt comes on board. A debt stabilization fund of $5 million would significantly reduce the tax impact of peak debt service in fiscal '25 through '28, allowing for a more gradual tax increase. The $1.5 million in transfers requested by this article will bring the debt stabilization fund balance to $3.5 million. Future funding will be needed to reach the $5 million level desired. Next slide. I ask for your support on Article 20 to increase the existing middle school debt stabilization fund by setting aside $1.5 million in available surplus funds. Thank you. Any questions on the presentation on Article 20?
Carmen Reese, 52 Devon Street. Just a comment on the presentation. I know that there's a graphic that shows the peak and what the stabilization fund does to to smooth that peak. And
Would you like to add that?
You'll
Yeah.
make that part of this presentation.
Good idea. Yep.
Thanks.
Okay.
I also think that the presentation should note what the impact on the certified free cash balance of such an expense.
Okay. Happy to do that. Okay, good feedback. Any questions on Zoom, Chris?
We've got 15 participants and no questions.
Okay, great. So we'll go to Article 21, which I believe is the high school. Is that right? Yeah.
We're going to shift gears to the high school. Jared, I'll let you hop right in.
Oh, I was talking on mute. Everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Excellent. All right. So I'll hop right to the first one. There we go. So the recommended budget for FY23 for the region is $36,541,181. This is an overall increase of 2.19% over FY22's budget. The 1,000 function includes all the salaries and expenditures for administration, IT, HR, and other central office-based staff. The 2,000 function includes salaries for teachers, assistants, and tutors, the principals and assistant principals, our substitute costs, school curriculum costs, school supplies and materials, special education contract services, and equipment. Salaries for teachers are the largest budget driver in this function. They represent an increase of $376,618 in the general fund portion. The 2,000 function does have some cost savings. Our contract services have decreased $111,000, mainly due to special education. Last year was the end of a 3-year computer lease that is no longer needed, and we realized a savings of also $111,000. The 3,000 function includes our transportation expenses, our nurses, athletics, and student activities. This function is decreasing 5.84%, mainly due to a decrease in our case transportation costs. Driver salaries are increasing a total of $53,687 based on the FY22 budget amount. Driver hours can be a bit fluid due to route changes and the need for some additional times on some of them. We are also currently in negotiations with them, so I expect this number to likely change. The 4,000 function includes all of our maintenance costs. We negotiated with both the high school custodial union and maintenance unions in FY21. Fixed charges include banking services, our audit contract, sick leave and retirement incentive, insurance, OPEB, and retirement. Overall, the increase is 0.36%, but there are a few drivers and cost savings that offset each other. Insurance premiums are going up $68,323, which includes a budgeted increase of $90,000 for active employees, but a $37,000 decrease in our retiree medical insurance. Also, the retirement incentive assessment is down $37,000 from the FY22 budgeted amount. Fixed assets, those include equipment and our vehicle bus replacements. The region's vehicle replacement line is increasing $53,000 due to 2 new bus leases in FY23. Debt is continuing to decrease. And lastly, our special education lines are increasing in FY23. We've identified $1,192,498 in budget drivers, made up of 8 expense categories. Again, for something to be considered a budget driver, the expense type category must increase by $50,000 or more. A cost saving is the same thing, except for a $50,000 decrease. This year, there are 48 expense categories in the region's budget, and 17 of them are salary categories. The first is our largest budget driver, teacher salaries. Or I should say, our largest budget driver is special education tuitions, and then it is the teacher salaries. For tuitions, we have 3 more tuitions in FY23 than we had in FY22. The addition of the students coming in from 8th grade versus the students who are aging out also contributed to this increase. Support staff and insurance categories both meet the definition of budget drivers in FY23. The DEI director was added. It was an added position in FY22. It is now a general fund expense, thus causing this category to go over the threshold. Salaries for assistants and tutors are increasing 6.02%, but we were also in negotiations with the tutor union. And lastly, driver salaries and the bus replacements are identified as budget drivers. We've identified $554,768 in cost savings made up of 4 cost categories. Contract transportation is down $237,819 due to CASE's formula, which again is based on ridership from 2 years ago. So the regions is down even though the CPS is up. Contract services. Those are down $121,000, mostly due to savings in instructional special education contract services. Also, the 3-year computer lease is up in FY22. And lastly, there is a decrease in debt. This budget has a total of 227.05 FTEs, which is 3.35 FTEs more than FY22's budget. Salaries account for a total increase of $741,473 in this budget. This includes every employee but our food service staff who are paid out of the food service revolving account. We're paying about 4.5 FTEs out of the food service revolving. Our largest salary category is the teacher salaries. This category, this one in particular, includes salaries, stipends, and longevity payments. This budget includes an additional 1.25 FTE. The main increase is an additional reading specialist that was needed in FY22. Half of this salary is being paid in the general fund, and the other is going to be paid out of the ESSER 3, which I'll explain on a later slide. There are some other small moving parts in other departments due to scheduling that caused the additional 0.25 FTE increase. There was a need for some additional support staff, and a 1.0 tutor in FY22. So that is why the tutor line was a budget driver on the last slide that are now being budgeted in FY22's budget. Lastly, the 0.4 FTE for the DEI director in the admin category. We charge approximately $431,297 in salaries in our grants and revolving accounts at the region. This is excluding, again, our food service grant, which is 100% self-funded in non-COVID times. We are expecting approximately $462,000 in our MECO grant in FY22 as well as FY23. Most of the grant is spent on staff salaries, driver salaries, and fuel costs. We then spend a small portion on supplies and materials and some PD. We also charge $50,000 in campus monitor salaries to the parking lot account. FY23's budget includes $3,046,720 in out-of-district placements. Our circuit breaker projection and IDEA grant offsets is $126,417 more in FY23. At this time, we are projecting 36 out-of-district students at the region in FY23. Excess and deficiency, we started the year with $1,627,938. We received in FY21 $160,507 more in revenue than budgeted. We ended the year with a balance of $587,864. We also increased the E&D contribution last year for FY22 from $300,000 to $600,000 to offset the FY21 budget in June, but it is also in the reserve to reduce. Therefore, we're estimating approximately $1,775,000 or 4.9% is our E&D level for FY21. As you know, 5% is the maximum. The DOR right now is behind. We usually have our E&D certified by this time, usually in early February, if not January. I think the town is also waiting for their free cash to be certified. So hopefully we get this number certified relatively soon. But I don't think it will be, it's going to be around 4.9%, which is really healthy and excellent. First, the retirement incentive estimates and projections for the region side. The district's OPEB fund balance increased to $7,569,232 in FY21. The valuation was recently completed and is in our budget book, which are now posted on our school websites. The district has level funded OPEB contribution amounts at $550,000 in FY21 and FY22, and we recommended the same amount for FY23. A couple of things to note, actuaries no longer use the ARC method or the ARC concept. They no longer give a specific amount and they no longer give a schedule. But at this time, we have funded approximately 30% of our obligation that is easily in the top 1, 2, or 3 in the entire state for regional school districts. The region has 22 buses, one of which is a wheelchair bus. The oldest is from 2008. As part of the FY23 budget, we have budgeted for 2 new bus leases, and we have a total of 15.23 total drivers at the region that we charge. Healthcare premiums continue to rise at a pace greater than inflation. FY21 active employee premiums increased between 1.5% and 6.5%, depending on carrier and plan. Rates in FY22 increased between 1% and 5.5%, depending on the carrier and plan. Recent estimates predict a 6.5% increase in FY23 and 6% in FY24. Beyond premium increases, the cost of retiree health insurance increases proportionately to the number of eligible retirees. Recent estimates predict a 6.5% per capita increase in FY23, and again, a 6% per capita increase in FY24. The debt is continuing to go down, as you can see here, through the next decade. This chart presents an anticipated debt service amount through the final high school construction debt service payment in FY2038. And as you know, any future debt issuance requires Concord and Carlisle town meeting approval. Here is a summary of the CARES Act and ESSER funds. Here is the ESSER 3 and what we plan on using this for. Summer school, as well as the reading specialist that I spoke about earlier. And that will be a 3-year plan for the reading specialist. In addition to assessments, the district receives state aid and other revenues. The governor's budget estimates came in higher than originally thought for Chapter 70 and Chapter 71, and we have since made those adjustments. Our E&D offset is back to $300,000. At some point in the not so distant future, I think the district will hope to reduce this to zero. But at this time, since we are projecting 4.9%, we are in good shape to leave it at that $300,000. All other revenues were level funded at this time. So overall, we expect approximately $4,294,241 in non-assessment revenue. As you know, assessments are based on the October 1 enrollment. On October 1st, Concord had 77.41% of the students and Carlisle had 22.59%. These numbers drive everything. The superintendent's request of the school committee's voted budget is $36,541,181. The first box starts with the operating budget, which excludes transportation and debt. After reducing the state and local revenue that we just went over in the last slide, the amount to assess the towns is $28,067,613. From there, we assess the transportation costs after we apply the Chapter 71 reimbursement. The amount of Chapter 71 reimbursement is $72,135, and then we break out the debt assessment. Therefore, overall, the region's budget is increasing 3.06% without debt in Concord and 2.4% with decreased debt. This represents a $174,172 number under your current guideline. And that is that presentation. Quicker.
Thank you. Any questions for Dr. Hunter or Jared on the high school budget? Brian?
Hi, Dr. Hunter. Jared, function 9,000, you may have highlighted what that is.
Jared's going to answer that
Can you
one.
define that one, please? Just because
Sure.
there's a 30% increase there. And
Yeah.
I just want to
We'll
what
find
it
it
is.
for you.
Yeah, that is just our special ed tuitions. So the 3 students, we went from 33 to 36 are contributing to that increase. So you can see how quickly, those lines can go up. So it's 435,000 or 27.76%.
Great, thanks.
Anyone else? Dee?
Yeah. Jared, could you please repeat the assessment distribution for the FY23 year, please?
So we have, pull that back up and I can share the screen. So for Concord, what you look at right here is, here's the comparison without debt, 3.06%, and then the assessment comparison with the decreased debt service. This is not within guideline, and this is the guideline amount. This number, the 647,386, represents the 174,000 under the guideline amount.
Okay, and the distribution between the two towns, what percent is Concord, what percent is Carlisle?
So right here, 77.14%, 77.41% is Concord, and 22.59% is Carlisle.
Do you have any information on, say, what that distribution will look like, percentage distribution will look like in the next coming 5 years?
Yes, and I can send that to you all. We did this when we presented to the finance committee. I know back in the winter time. So we have estimates. It's going to start going to the Carlisle side in the near future. So I'll send that over to Christine and have her pass that out.
Thank you.
Greg?
Jared, in the savings in transportation, is that mostly because of the ridership due to COVID going down for the past 2 years? Because you said it was.
Yeah, it's a complicated formula. Case transportation, they do it based on the ridership from 2 years ago. So if you remember at the Concord side, it's going up approximately 110,000 due to the ridership, and this one is decreasing a significant amount. The purpose was to be able to budget and not have these sorts of swings. And Laura, you can speak on this maybe a little bit more. There might be a better way to do it in the future. After COVID, it's been less predictable, and I think it's going to continue that way. And
Yeah, I was going to ask you, do you think that will come back?
As a board, I sit on the board of CASE, as do the other superintendents, and we're watching that really carefully right now because ridership is down and we're even turning kids away because we can't staff drivers. A big portion of CASE is transportation versus programs. And so there's so many moving variables right now that it all needs to get looked at and watched closely. For the moment, because we're just starting to come out of the pandemic for anything towards normal, we're trying to just sort of study what's happening. So I think in the fall, we may take a closer look at the formula and decide if it's still working or if we need to adjust because of the variables of the pandemic. We actually aren't sure ridership at CASE will ever go back to what it was, in which case there's a lot to talk about. So.
Okay, anybody else? No? Anyone in the room have a question for Dr. Hunter or Jared?
Terry Ackerman, Heathbridge Road. I'm on the select board, but speaking for myself. I had a question on slide number 4, if you are able to pull that up. So in this slide, the teachers' salaries are going up 2.6%. And I noticed in the CPS budget, the teacher's salary budget driver slide was up 5-point-something%. Mm-hmm. And I'm just wondering why there's such a huge difference.
Sure. Part of this, a couple reasons. The first, at the CPS side, we negotiated with both unions last year, and the longevity for the CPS side went up to match, to make it equitable with the region side. So that's one. Also, we had additional FTEs that were added in the CPS side that contribute to this increase. So this isn't all COLA and raise increases. This is overall increases to the salary for teachers.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anyone on Zoom, Chris, have questions?
Got about 14 participants and no hands raised.
Okay, then I think we'll go on to the next article, which is the high school capital projects.
Excellent.
While Jared pulls the slides up, I'll just comment that we're bringing back something that will seem familiar, but point of clarity, it is just to pave the road, do the lights, safety, no parking. So we're really here just trying to get this roadway finished. You'll see the years are not serving it well since we were last year, to say the least. So we're going to show you a few pictures and see if we can figure out how together we might finish this. And the other point of order is that this has also got to pass in Carlisle, and their town meeting is April 25th, which is before Concord's. So they will get the first pass at this, and we will share those outcomes with you.
I'm trying to pull this up and get my notes. 1 second.
We could see the deck.
You see it? Oh.
We could, yeah.
Sorry about that.
Maybe Chris put it up.
Sorry about that.
There you go.
Yeah, that's good, Jared, we can see it.
All right, so the FY23 capital. So this article, as you know, as Dr. Hunter just said, is to borrow for the repaving and the lighting of the access road. It's very important to point out that the town engineer, and I'm going to read a quote that we received in an email from him. The town had performed a field review of the pavement condition of the access road and estimated that the pavement condition index lies in the range of 40 to 55, which is considered poor in the system we currently use for the town's public streets. So the estimated cost for this project is $1,053,665. The school committee voted to use $200,000 of the stabilization account to offset that. Therefore, if approved, the amount that would be assessed would be $853,665. The lighting for the access road, that is broken out to be approximately $223,000, and that includes, conduit, light foundation, light post, the lamp head, as well as the wire installation. The access road costs is approximately $830,000. That would include the catch basins and drainage, the manholes. Regardless, 4 will need to be replaced. Concrete piping, curb and curb removal, granite edging, cement, and the asphalt. Here are some pictures from 2019. At this time, you can see that our roads were already broken and spalled. The utility covers had sunken. The entire length of the access road already had alligator cracks and patches and potholes. Sidewalks and curbing are cracked and in need of replacement. And we had already done multiple patches and repairs. This was already identified as a safety issue with limited ADA accessibility. So that was 2019. A little bit more for 2019. You can see some patching and significant cracking. Fast forward to 2022, and our access roads have gotten significantly worse. They are really beyond repair. Here are some pictures of the Thoreau entrance. The Thoreau side entrance is even in worse condition now, with cracks and patches throughout the extent of the apron. Most of the curbs look like this. This is a significant safety issue. Unfortunately, this is really what happens to the asphalt berms. Here are some pictures in front of the Beatty Center. Again, as you can see, sections have been replaced, and you can see a little bit of the damage to the speed bump. On the Walden Street entrance, there continues to be significant ponding with damaged, cracked, and uneven pavement. Flooding is even constant, and sometimes when it rains, it's impassable. And that is that presentation.
Great. So when was what is the age of the road?
I don't know if we have the original date. It was not replaced during the high school project, so it predates new construction by far. It was value engineered out of the project, so we can find that out for you, Chris.
Yeah, that might be a good question to know. And you said you had input from the town on the amounts. Is that right, Jared?
Correct. They were unbelievable. Shout out to them. They worked with us in 2019 and gave us estimates. And then they went out again this year and updated those. And that's what we use to base the current costs on.
Are they going to do the work for you?
So we plan to, yes, we're going to work with them and their vendor. They're going to be bidding out, and we will be going on that. And what we can do, because they're going to have to start doing that before town meeting, is that we can put, contingent on town meeting approvals. We'll get a significant economy of scale by doing that.
Thank you.
Jared, I have a question about the allocation of the $200,000 stabilization fund. First of all, I'm glad to see you using that, but did that all go to Concord? I mean, can you pull up the slide again?
Yeah, so that, let's see, no. So the way that works, I can show you that. The way that works is that 200,000 is going to just offset, it will offset the total costs. And the way that the assessments work is every year they assess based on the current enrollment. So the total project cost, if it happens to come in at 853,000, we can't ask for any more than that, then that 200,000 will offset the total borrowing costs.
But I guess I'm still confused. The 853 is the not to exceed assessment to Concord.
No, this is the combined cost. Yeah.
Okay, so that's not what it says in the warrant. It says it's actually Concord's share.
Oh, we'll have to take a look at that. Yeah, that is not Concord's share. That is the entire cost. Yeah.
It says Concord's share. So, okay. So that's something.
And maybe Carmen could comment on that. I think there might be a reason for that, that we have to, my understanding is the total amount has to be approved, and then it's apportioned out based on the assessment. And I think there is a reason for that 853,000 that did come up.
Okay, it's the part in the box that says it's Concord's share.
Okay, we'll take a look at that. Great.
Something to look at.
Yep, Carmen?
Does it say it's Concord's share in the box, these costs?
In the box.
Yeah, it does say that it provides Concord's share. So the explanatory box is inaccurate.
Okay.
That doesn't matter. The explanatory box, it's confusing, so it matters in that way, but it's not actually part of the legal document, which is the warrant. But yes, town meeting does have to approve the entire amount of the project cost, and then the assessment comes back to Concord for its share. And when you're ready, I have a question.
Okay. So we'll be sure to clarify what the proportionate share is in both communities.
Great.
Okay. Anybody else have FinCom on questions? Okay. Anyone else in the room? Looks like Carmen, you're up.
I have a question about the stabilization fund. What stabilization fund are we talking about?
So at the end of, do you want to go, Laura?
No, go ahead.
So at the end of FY21, the region did have a surplus, and the school committee voted to, we had established a stabilization account, I think it was in 1991, and they voted to add $200,000 of that, of the remaining funds into the stabilization account, and also reduced assessments as well. So it's called the Capital Stabilization Fund.
So this is a fund that's maintained by the region?
Correct.
As opposed to, okay. Because if it's a stabilization fund that was created by a town meeting, you need a vote at town meeting to get any money out of it.
This is under the school committee's purview, this particular one.
I think that's good.
Thank you.
No, thanks for asking, Carmen.
I have a question.
Dean?
This isn't really about this year's capital article, but an outstanding capital item that is outstanding at the region is the non-bathrooms at the football stadium. And I'm wondering if or when that capital item will come to our attention.
Yes, we have been talking about that as we have capital discussions where the discussion has been about whether we go for a design so we can submit to the state for a waiver, because the facility count for restrooms is 44 without the waiver. It'll drop in half with the waiver. It's still, I think we're struggling I'll speak for myself, I think they're struggling with me. It's a large cost for a number of restrooms that don't feel necessary. So we're still debating and discussing all those variables to it, but it is on the radar.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, anybody on Zoom have a question?
There's 15 people on Zoom and no questions.
No questions, okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Hunter and Jared.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you. So that's the end of the articles that are to be covered in the hearing. So if there's no other business, I will adjourn the hearing. Thank you all very much. Okay. So FinCom, we're gonna meet here. We're gonna open up our FinCom meeting. There are at least 4 people on Zoom, so I want to be able to see them. So Parashar and Peggy and Ray Andrews and Eric Dahlberg. I've got 4 members on Zoom, so if you could let us see them, that would be great. You can put your cameras on, you guys.
We've only got, it's Mr. Dahlberg and Mr. Andrews.
Okay, can you, Chris, Parashar's on, but he may be not promoted. Can you promote him or whatever you do?
He's joining now.
Okay.
We're gonna try and change the view for you.
Okay.
Hey, Chris, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Parashar. I can hear you. I can't see you, but I can hear you.
That's okay. I'm in a car, so I'm not going to get you guys first.
Okay, well, that's good. Okay, so why don't I call, I think I can easily do it. So I'm going to open up the regular FinCom meeting. Everybody who's in agreement with that, say aye. 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 Okay, very good. Excellent, so we'll open up the meeting. So we have a couple of articles to look at tonight. We have first one, let's see, is the Minuteman was the first article that we went through. Is there any further discussion on Minuteman? Anybody have any other things to say on Minuteman? So I assume we're ready for a vote on Minuteman then. Okay, can I have a motion on Article 17?
Move to recommend affirmative action on Article 17.
Second.
All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous. Okay. Let's go to then Article 18, which is the Concord Public Schools budget. So I think we should have let's have some discussion on this one. So when Parashar is in his car, so thank you for joining us, Parashar, behind the wheel. From when we last...
I'm not driving, for the record.
Oh, good, oh, good. I wouldn't want to be responsible for a crash. Last time we talked, Parashar showed us a couple weeks ago a chart that talked through where we were on both the town, the CPS, and the high school with respect to the guidelines. So just to remind you, with respect to CPS, as was mentioned, sorry? With respect to CPS, we're, let me get the right number here. I think it's 300,000 or so still.
350.
350.
423.
Yep.
It's 312,585, right? Because they came down
Oh, you're right.
37,000,
You're right.
right?
Yep.
So it's 312,585 is the difference. So we had a guideline of 2.7%, which was 43.3 million. I'm sorry, their request was 43.1, and we're $300,000 away. So they have gone back and looked at it. You heard some of that discussion this evening. There was discussion at the school committee, but the number hasn't really moved since then. So our question for us is, what would we like to do? How do we feel about where we are in the guideline? Do we want to leave it? Do we want to adjust it? Anybody have any thoughts?
So Chris, can I just chime in here if you guys can hear me?
Please, please, Parashar.
Yeah, so thank you, Chris. And I guess, one thing I do want to recognize is the work that's been put in to developing the budget by the school administration and the school committee for both CPS and the high school. I think it's been great. And not only the budget itself, but the work that was done to prepare and identify the cost projections for the next 5 years by category, which I think was helpful, at least for me and hopefully to other members of the committee, and provide some context here. Having said that, I think, I think it would have been more helpful and would still be helpful if the school administration and the committee could identify potential areas where they would be able to meet the guideline, to show the residents and the voters a sense of what the trade-offs are. But I think, at least as far as I'm aware, in the discussions that have taken place in different
Are you still there?
His picture just went off.
forum, I think the answer
Parashar, we lost you there for a
has been
second.
in response to G, meet the gap. The answer has been, we just can't. And so I think, at this point, I feel like I would vote no action pending some additional visibility into what some of the trade-offs are that would have to be made to meet the gap.
Okay. Did people hear that and understand it, or do you want him to say that again? Okay. Okay, everybody's heard Parashar?
The one thing I would say.
And I say that mindful that it's a relatively small percentage of the overall budget. Mindful that they forward that over the years, frankly, the middle school, that spending that's supposed to come up as well. So let me stop here and just turn it back over to you, Chris. And if I broke up, or maybe you could fill in some of the gaps based on our previous conversation.
Yeah, so I think the second point you were making was with respect to understanding that in the next year, we expect the costs to rise further in CPS due to the contract, and that puts additional pressure on what we're seeing today. I think that was your second point.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, Dean.
Yeah, so I think if I understand you correctly, Parashar, you'd like to see at least a slide that says this set of line items would have to be cut from the budget in order to achieve the guideline. And, cut this, cut this, cut this. I feel as though those exercises tend to come up with the most draconian line items they can find and say, well, we'd have to give up this, and it would be horrible to meet the guideline. So I don't know how helpful those kinds of slides or those kinds of presentations are, mostly because if you're asking us to find money we don't want to spend, we'll show you money we really don't want to give up. And I just don't know how helpful that is. It's not they're not going to show you the stuff right at the margin. They're going to show you the stuff that really is cutting close to the bone, is the way I would feel about that, the way those things go.
Well, I agree, Dean, and that may be the case, but I'd like to see it. And I think if that were to happen, frankly, it gives you a perspective into kind of the thinking. And frankly, I think it's 1%? You could do 1% across the board cut.
Right.
I mean, that's always an option too. It doesn't have to be draconian.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's true.
And that's why, I asked again of the superintendent, why is the budget so tight, right? So it's a $43 million budget. Right. And this is a $300,000 gap. That's not that hard to solve for in a $43 million budget. Everything is not fixed, right? I understand there are contractual expenses, but there's another $7 million in it that isn't even related to salaries. So it's a large budget. So I ask that in thinking through a couple of things. So what Mary's point about what the pressures that we have within the town to keep the tax rate to a reasonable level, And we're kind of up against it, right? So in the past couple of years with COVID, and even before then, in my time on the committee, you're longer than I am, the town is always making up the difference, right? We're always struggling with, we have the same discussion every year, and it comes out of the town. Now the town is hurting, right? So now we hear about the road situation, and with importantly, the salary issues and the compensation issues at the town. And we don't have as much wiggle room, and we don't have anything in free cash, right? So we're going to be at the bottom in free cash. And we have the middle school, and so we have a lot of things here that really point to say, you know, sorry, we're going to have to tighten the belts. And so that's what I feel like we've asked for. Some members of the school committee also asked for that, but the answer was, you know, sorry, there's not much here to do. We've done as much as we can do, I guess is a fair way to say it. But even more, you know, sort of not making me satisfied with that answer is the fact that there's no plan, right? So if we had a problem and we had, you know, let something happen and the schools had to do something, well, how would you do it? If there's no plan for you to ever retract on the costs, what would you do, right? There has to be a way to do it. So that wasn't, those questions weren't answered, that some members of the school committee asked them and they weren't answered. So it doesn't give me a comfortable feeling that there's going to be an answer to it. I think they're just going to keep going in a well-intended way, but it doesn't seem like there's a way for them to think about how to cut costs, and I think they're going to have to, because I don't think we can sustain 5% growth at the salary line in the middle school without any other revenue, and they don't have it. So that's my thinking. So I'm fairly concerned that even though they've tried, they haven't been able to come back with a whole lot other than revenue. The adjustments that they've given, which we appreciate, are revenue, right? So things that they came in higher than they expected, very little on the cost side. So those are my thoughts.
Christine,
yes, please.
Can you just explain your second statement there about if something were to happen, they couldn't cover it? Just a little more detail.
So just if yeah, you have to speak into the microphone, Greg.
Sorry, Christine, can you just explain on your second comment there about if something were to happen and they couldn't cover it? Can you just explain that for me, for me a little bit more?
Yeah, we asked, essentially, we have a less than 1% gap on this budget. So what if something happens? So if you can't find less than 1% in your $43 million budget, let's assume it wasn't FinCom asking you for it. Let's say something happened. A building burned, you know, something happens, right? You know, there's some change in your operation that requires you to have to cut back on costs. What would you do if you have no levers to pull, which is pretty much the answer they've said? I have nowhere to go. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes,
they've said there isn't much wiggle room, and that's kind of surprised by that.
Thank you for your clarification.
Yep. Anybody else have thoughts on how we're going to vote on this one? Mary? Mary has thoughts, I know it.
You know, we could go and look line item by line item, and we could look at ways that they could cut costs, and that might help us feel that our request is more reasonable. But really, what we're here for is we're here to set a guideline, and it's up to them, I think, to meet that guideline. To me, it's really as simple as that. That's really, and that's my question earlier was, have you thought about how are you going to meet this guideline given the pressures you have from your contractual obligations? So that was what my question was getting at. And I think it's really up to them to figure that out. And it's a tough problem, but, that's all I'll say. We publish a guideline, and I think it was a generous guideline. It's been a generous guideline even when the town was suffering for the last few years. We were always pretty generous to the schools. So I think a guideline is the guideline.
Anybody else have any thoughts? Any more discussion on it?
I just feel like we publish a guideline, but we don't have any data for what the schools, you know, need at that point. We just say, okay, yeah, you know, here, you know, sort of 3% is our guideline that you can go up. Right, we don't have any data based on like, oh, if they want to really pull in, you know, special, like how much is that going to cost or save, like when we're making that guideline. So it's a little bit, you know, you can see the support before the schools, right? Obviously supporting the middle school project.
Right.
Right, and these numbers show the services that we're delivering, right, to them, and you know, if we don't deliver those services to the towns of Concord, or sorry, not the towns, the residents, the students of Concord, you know, how's the town going to feel? I'm not saying it's right to, you know, one way or the other, but just, you know, you got to take that aspect of it as well.
Greg, this is Prosher. Can I, Greg, just, Greg, can I just, I just wanted to respond a little bit in terms of, we don't know what their costs are. They did a 5-year estimate. I think they did a good job, frankly, which showed us major categories, how costs are going to grow. They showed us, based on those costs, based on their strategic priorities, what they thought their budget should look like. I think we took, at least I did when I made the recommendation, took those into account when we developed the guidelines. We compared the guidelines to several different measures of inflation across different categories, and we came to a conclusion. I find it difficult myself to assess whether their request is reasonable, because I have no other basis other than a statement made repeatedly that we've looked anywhere and we can't find any more pennies in the cushions of the couch, which again, $30 million, $40 million budget, $300,000. I find a little bit difficult and challenging to understand. And as I said earlier, I think we've all been, or at least many of us have been in organizations where, for whatever set of circumstances, folks are asked, for the next 6 months, 9 months, reduce your spending by 1%, 2%, 3%. That's an easy solution, not maybe ideal, but an easy solution to come up with $300,000. And we haven't even seen that offered, and even said, geez, if we did that, here's the 3 departments that would be most adversely affected in years out. We've had no context for whether what would happen. I just replied a little bit that way, Greg, to your comments.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Are folks ready to vote on it?
Ray has this here.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ray, yeah.
I have a comment. Yeah, it seems as the finance committee, it's our job to say we've looked at this and it doesn't, there's a very small differential between the budget and what they're asking for, the guidelines and what they're asking for. And we can say we don't recommend it, and the town can override that, and we've done our job, and the voters at the town meeting can make their decision.
Chris?
Yep.
Chris? Yes. I'm wondering, we have 2 school committee members here, and I'm wondering if they would like to speak to this concern that we have, and because that was your job to approve that budget.
You really?
They can't speak for the committee.
No, they can't. The committee voted to approve it.
So Dee, I'm going to give you a non-answer because I cannot speak for the school committee, and we all voted to support this budget. So I cannot give you any other, I mean, we could go back to our committee and advise your comments and questions, certainly.
Okay, so in your deliberations, you supported everything that was obviously you supported everything that was in their proposed budget.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay.
Perhaps we need to not take a vote on it tonight. Maybe we need to get additional information.
I don't think we will.
No.
So I would agree with you if I thought there was going to be additional information, but I don't think there is. So they know that there's a gap. They've discussed it themselves at the school committee with the administration.
Okay.
And they've come back with 32, the last adjustment was 32,000 related to, I think, a resignation. But beyond that, it was the revenue adjustments we heard first. So I don't believe anything else is coming, Dee. I think from that perspective, I would say no reason to hold a vote, yeah.
Chris?
Yeah.
I'd like to make a motion that the Finance Committee vote no action on this article.
Second.
Second.
Okay,
What does that mean?
it means we don't recommend the town meeting vote yes on it. It's like a no, yeah? Great.
So do we want to say anything to that? Do we want to say that we had a guideline?
Well, we'll have a FinCom report that will explain our vote, so we'll have an opportunity to
Okay.
explain exactly how we came to that, yes.
Okay.
Carmen might give us a few minutes to talk.
We could, exactly, we could speak at town meeting as well, if we'd like, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Greg?
Christine, can you just tell me what would happen if the town actually said no to the Article 2?
Revert back to.
What actually happens if the town doesn't approve the school budget as well? I don't know in that case what happens.
I assume they'd have to come back, I don't know what happens, I don't know the answer to that, I don't know.
Does it revert back to last
The old
year's budget?
It may.
Carrie's here.
Oh,
Carrie.
Oh, I don't see her. Oh, there she is in the back. I couldn't see you, sorry.
I'm not exactly sure what
The question is,
If the CPS budget was not approved at town meeting, what would happen? How do they, pay bills and so forth if you don't have an approved budget?
So that's an interesting question. I think probably they would revert to a 1/12 budget, but I would have to look that up in state law. It's not something that I have encountered before. I mean, we would then be looking at another town meeting. I mean, they would have to have an appropriated budget.
I think it's more likely, just to interject here, that there would be an amendment to bring it down to our guideline or something like that, or maybe a halfway between our guideline and then, if rather than just nothing happening at all, it's likely that we would have some sort of vote on an alternate number. But I think the likelihood of just, no, we're not having this is not remote. It's almost impossible to believe.
I mean, now that you say that, I'm thinking you actually can't dissolve town meeting without a budget. I mean, honestly, this is not something that comes up, that I've ever encountered, but.
That's what we'd be asking the town to do, though, right? If we say no, we're not resolving the budget, so we should come up with.
Well,
We
do.
did.
We have a budget. So we do have that. We do have a guideline. So wouldn't we, before a vote is taken at town meeting, wouldn't we try to amend it? And if the amendment passes, then that becomes the new. And if it doesn't pass,
What would you do then, Mary?
it would simply be the article comes up before the town, maybe we have a chance to say, well, we recommend no action, and then there'd be a vote. in
Right,
town, Right?
right. No, but yeah.
And I don't want to say what I think the vote will be, but
Great, but the town takes.
Sounds-
If we're
That's
saying,
correct.
if we're
That's right.
saying,
Yeah,
don't approve this.
Right.
We're into the scenario that Carrie just mentioned. Right, we're not doing,
oh, I see what you're saying.
yeah.
The options, Greg, honestly, the options are somewhat binary for us to make a recommendation against what's in the warrant. They're binary.
Right.
But when we editorialize, it is certainly an opportunity for us to say, we've set this guideline, and that's really our, if anyone were to come to the floor and offer an amendment at that number, you would find some support from our committee through a,
Can the FinCom offer that amendment?
No, it's not really our job to, it's
Why
like.
not?
Okay.
Why not?
Lois has a question, and then I'm going to, go ahead, Lois.
If the guidelines have any force at all, we have to have the ability to enforce them. We set a guideline, we listened to presentations, we looked at the budgets. It's not our job to go in and do line item edits of the budget. We listened to the presentations. If the if CPS had convinced us that they've done all they can, and this is the best they can do. It's within our authority to say, okay, it doesn't meet our guideline. And still vote for it. What some of us on the committee are saying is that we are not convinced that the guideline can't be met. And if the guideline has any force at all, any real contribution to make to this budgeting process, we have to have the ability, when we're put in that position, to say, no, we think you should have met the guideline, and we are recommending no action because we don't believe you have made the effort necessary to meet the guideline.
Okay, comment?
Just a second, Brian, go ahead.
So my question to that is the difference between no action and no.
Oh, no action just means we can't. That's our
Because
option.
no action, I am interpreting no action to your point, Dean, which is a no action vote is editorializing on what we think. So
A no
help me
action vote
understand
says we are not recommending to town meeting that
you approve this.
it approve this. They could still approve it.
Okay.
It's weird language. It's weird language.
Exactly.
It's basically saying
We're just
recommend.
communicating the opinion of FinCom, and if we vote no action, our opinion is we're not recommending this article.
Right, okay.
Chris, can I interrupt with a question?
Oh,
Yeah.
wait a second, Parashar. Dee, go ahead.
Okay. I don't think we have to take a vote. If we don't take a vote before town meeting and we say at
We're
town-
currently on a motion.
Excuse me, let me just finish. I don't think we have to take a vote right now, and I think we can propose an amendment that would just say, we don't approve of what they're doing, we don't support what they're doing, what we want is the guideline budget. And then that is an amendment to the article, and if the amendment is supported, fine, and if the amendment isn't supported, it just reverts back, and then we can independently say, we don't approve it or support it.
Well, first of all, we can take a no action vote tonight and revisit it at a subsequent meeting. We have at least 2 more meetings between now and town meeting. So if there is some change on the part, some amendment offered by the people who are doing the budgeting, then we have the ability to revisit this vote. So that, I hear what you're saying, Dee. I still think we should take a vote tonight. And we have the option of revisiting it if there's some change on the ground. I also don't understand how the kind of amendment you're proposing would work. We can't get into the guts of this thing and decide where to make
No,
changes
I'm not even suggesting that.
No, I know that, but then I don't know how the amendment works, unless the amendment just says, it's too bad Carmen isn't here, I'd love to hear her thoughts on this. We believe there should be a 1% across the board cut in the budget.
I think we should just present a number, which is the guideline number.
Well, but that's the same thing.
Why isn't that a budget?
They can then go figure out where.
Yeah. It's the same. It's an overall 1%.
Terry, did you have something that will illuminate this discussion?
Terry Ackerman, 89 Eastridge Road, speaking for myself, not for the select board. I do remember, I think, when I was on the finance committee, that there was another year where we disagreed with one of the school budgets, I forget which one, and the finance committee did offer an amendment that was, the guideline number instead of the school committee number. So you can do that, and it's not getting into the guts, it's just saying, this is the bottom line number that the finance committee is recommending. And I had one other comment, and I don't know if you want to hear that now, it's on this article. Or wait.
I'm gonna wait on that one, if that's okay.
So
John?
isn't no action effectively reinforcing the guideline?
Yes.
Right.
So I propose we vote.
Not
We have a motion on the table that's been seconded. I propose we vote and see where that leaves us.
I don't think it's.
John, can I just ask a question first before we vote? I don't disagree about voting. And it's too bad Carmen's not there, but I'm sure one of you guys know. At town meeting, regardless of if we vote, no action. At town meeting, who can stand up and actually make an amendment to the warrant article on CPS? Anybody can, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, And if I wanted to make a motion as an independent person to amend what's going to appear, I have to submit that in advance to the town moderator. Is that correct? The language?
Yes,
Yeah,
What is the deadline for that?
that day.
On the floor.
yeah, that day.
On the floor. Okay, thank you. Because I can independently make a motion with a specific number and a way to get there, correct? It sounds like? Okay, thank you.
Just propose an amendment, yeah.
So we could take a vote tonight, still make an amendment.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, that's correct. And we could either vote on that tonight, or we could vote no action on this article, and then put as an agenda item for our next meeting, the possibility of offering an amendment, a FinCom offering an amendment, and it'll give us a chance to look at the precedent that Terry was just describing to
Can the
us.
FinCom offer an amendment, or does it have to be made by an individual?
I think it has to be a citizen.
It has to be an individual. I
Yeah,
think.
so we can further research that point. We can take action tonight, but we're not foreclosing the possibility of pursuing
Yes.
an amendment strategy along the lines of what Dee was suggesting.
Do we know that for sure? We can modify a no action later on?
Yeah, we can reconsider this vote.
Yes, we can. At any meeting, we can come back and reconsider it.
Yeah.
Absolutely, we can.
There may be some Robert's Rules things about reconsidering your own, like you have to have some threshold number of, to get over it and reconsider something.
I would rather we kind of research just to make sure that that is not, unless somebody is absolutely sure that we can come back and revisit it, I would rather we not take a vote on it and research.
Well, can I, yeah, so here's the thing. I mean, at the end of the day, we're an advisory body. I recommend we take a vote today. I recommend we take a vote, and regardless of whether we can reconsider it or not, they'll have an ability to make a statement at town meeting, right? And the town at that point can hear what we have to say.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table. So the motion's and a second, and it stands, so we need to deal with it. So can we take a vote on the motion? I would like to take one.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So can you restate the motion so we have it fresh?
The motion was that the Finance Committee vote to recommend no action on Article 18, which is the Concord Public Schools budget.
Okay. All the ayes?
Aye.
So
I did not
Parashar is
vote.
an aye. So we have one, two all
Abstention.
nays?
No.
Nay is one?
Mine is an
Abstention is
abstention.
one.
You
Okay,
have too many hands in the air right now for,
okay, I'm
Wait,
sorry.
everybody behind you has their hand up.
I'm sorry. So we have one abstention and one no. Is that correct?
Okay.
The clerk, you have that? Okay. Okay, good. Well, I've got 2 on Zoom.
No, three.
Three
Because
on
Parsha's a yes as
Oh,
well.
right, sorry, Parashar on Zoom. 10?
10 yea,
10. 10 yay,
1 nay.
1 nay, and 1 abstention.
My
Okay.
understanding is we will continue this discussion, and somebody is researching what we can and cannot do.
Isn't that up to the chair?
Yep. Yes.
I suppose it is up to the chair. For clarification purposes,
Okay, right, right. We will figure out what the amendment protocols are. So we'll figure that out. Okay? All right, so then let's go to, if we're done with that, we're going to go to Article 19, which was the Concord Public Schools capital projects. Any discussion or questions on that? That's the $900,000 that's included in the town budget.
Move to recommend affirmative action on
Second.
Article 19.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? Okay. Everyone in favor?
Aye.
Against? Okay, we have 1 against. John Hickling is a nay.
John Hickman.
John Hickling at the end of the table there, and everybody else is an aye. Okay. Good. We vote on our own article, I guess. Article 20, which is the debt stabilization article. Any discussion on that? Can I get a motion?
Recommend affirmative action on Article 20.
Okay, and I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Good.
Aye.
All right, so that's unanimous? Looks like it's unanimous, okay. You have that, Lois? Okay. 21 is the regional high school budget. That includes the road paving.
Move.
Oh, pardon me, that's wrong. That's 21, that's the regular budget, excuse me. Any discussion on that? Now, here's one where they have come in below the guideline. So, do we need to adjust the guideline?
No.
No?
No.
Okay. Okay. Can I have a motion on Article 21?
Move that the Finance Committee recommend affirmative action on Article 21.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, good, so that's unanimous on 21. Article 22, which is the regional high school capital projects, which is the road paving that they discussed for the primarily. Any discussion on that?
Move affirmative action.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 That's, looks like, is that unanimous, Dee? You had reached it? Yep, okay. Okay, very good. Is there any public comment?
Christine, can I just ask one
Oh,
question?
yes,
before
I'm sorry, go ahead.
we Continue here. If we add up both budgets for the school, do they fall into the guideline then together?
Together, no.
They're just out, okay, I remember that.
I just
Yeah.
got a text from Ned Perry's.
Go ahead, Ms. Ackerman.
Okay, very briefly, Terry Ackerman, East Bridge Road, speaking for myself, not the select board. I'm just looking at this pie chart, back to Article 18 again, just a brief comment since you're going to be doing some research anyway. I do remember back 10 or 20 years ago that the total combined percentage was, of the two schools, was about 50%.
Of the
And
town's budget, is that the chart you're looking at?
This is the, right now, they're projecting for next year, CCRSD 17.5% and CPS 34.6%, which adds up to a little bit more than 52%. So it seems like we're drifting gradually to increase the size of the pie for the two school pieces.
Yes.
And so it's just a comment and something you might want to research in thinking about Article 18. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I don't think we have any other business according to the agenda.
She didn't include.
Anybody have anything else they want to bring up? Otherwise, I think we're set to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
We've got one hand raised.
We got a hand up.
Oh, I got a hand up. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you. Please, Chris, we have someone with a question?
This isn't a question. This is Ned Perry, 362 Bedford Street. During my first couple of years as town moderator in the early 2000s, we often had 2 or 3 levels of school budgets, one supported by the Finance Committee, one by the School Committee, and several by the citizens. So it's very often and very possible for the Finance Committee to move to amend or have your own budget level. And I'm sorry that Carmen's not there to respond to this, but you have every right to move forward as you see fit as a Finance Committee. And if it's different than the school committee budget, it's different than the school committee budget. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. Is there anybody else, Chris? No?
No.
Okay, great. All right, so I think we're good. Do we have a motion to adjourn in a second? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
And good night.